Hello and welcome back to our training arc. We are back with the commentary because I had so much fun with it last time. And this time I will be playing Black Yellow Luffy on the left, and the other half of this channel, my friend, will be playing Yellow Enel on the right. Based on her review, this is probably her least favorite deck to play this format because it really doesn't grind her gears, but you know, it's not for everyone. So after her first turn, she just passes, and I am very luckily just drawing into the event here. And I'm able to dig for some of the brothers. That 4-cost Kuzan is supposed to be an Ice Age. I think prior to this game, I just forgot to switch it out. But it's now definitely an Ice Age. I grabbed the big brother Luffy here because, if I remember correctly, there are already 2 baby Luffys in my hand, and I thought it's always good to match the big brothers to the baby brothers you have in hand. She swings 8 into my life, which is great for me, because, you know, Luffy hates it when people starve. I'm not really a fan of using my 2Ks, but, you know, all decks need to have their weakness. Here I play my Garp Searcher, which is really pretty amazing that I get to search, you know, one turn after the other. It always feels really reliable. If I remember correctly, I think I take a baby Sabo here because I have a big brother Sabo in hand, and again, like I said earlier, it's just good to have all the brothers matching. It definitely helps with the consistency in the deck and trying to keep as much gas as possible for as long as possible. Because Black Yellow Luffy does in fact have a lifespan, and it's probably 3-4 turns max. I swing 8 back. I know it's better to starve Enel in some cases, but I find in this matchup, starving them around like 2 life or not really letting them use their leader ability is just fine. It goes to her 5 Dawn turn here, and she just plays Shirahoshi, which, you know, I find whenever an Enel player uses Shirahoshi, it kind of puts ease on my mind as their opponent, because that just tells me, like, you know, they're not really finding the stuff they want to see, or just their Gadatsus don't have the value they would usually like in other matchups. She trashes a Sabo here and an Onami, which I have to say do kind of feel useless when played against Black Yellow Luffy, especially with as later on in the game the Sabo blocker just gets recycled over and over and over again nonstop. So going into my 6 Dawn turn here, I definitely did not feel anything like pressure or threat, so I thought to myself, okay, this is definitely a turn where I'm just gonna dig as much as I can and find whatever pieces I can. So I use Flampe, which also gets me down life, which is great. It draws me into Baby Luffy and Baby Sabo, which I think at this point I have 3 Baby Luffys in hand now and 2 Baby Sabos, and then obviously the corresponding big brothers, which feels pretty great. And then I play the blocker Sabo for any like protection, etc, etc, and to draw even more. It draws me into 2 more big brothers, Ace and Sabo respectively, and honestly I think this whole game, spoiler alert, I just find the pieces one after the other, and it really reminds me, like, man, when this deck has the gas, it's unstoppable. So as the turn passes over to the Enel player over here, she does a turn that I don't necessarily expect, but I am not mad at it. I think it is a very fun turn. She swings 8 at my life, and I take a moment that I cut out to think if I should take or not, and it's definitely that idea like, oh, if I take now, will I be able to survive later? I think that's always the #1 question on my mind when I'm playing Black Yellow Luffy. I do take, because I think at this point I'm comfortable to. And then she drops 2 Shirahoshi blockers, which I thought was pretty funny because now at this point anything on her board is just a Shirahoshi, all in different arts. It's giving girl group. So that was amusing. Going into my next turn, however, I use what I think is just as important as Flampe. I use Hiyori to stack my life. It was lucky that my Hiyori grabbed another Hiyori from life, so it didn't feel like I was, you know, I was going in the negative counter too much, or losing too much counter, sorry. If I remember correctly, what I put down in there is Luffy, and then I just bring him out and I pump my leader. So I bring him out, it pumps my leader by 2, and I claim the character Luffy's ability to pump itself all the way to 8k. There are definitely moments where I find myself mindlessly doing it, and it puts me in a pretty tough spot when I remember that my opponent has a Bon Clay on their side, and they copy my now 8k Luffy, and they swing at me for a lot more attack power for less investment. At this point, I replace the Hiyori with the baby Sabo. The baby Sabo will bring out the big brother Sabo, and there is that KO immunity again, and the draw 2, trash 2. I also think there's a gecko in my hand at this point, if I remember correctly. Yes, there is. And, you know, whenever I see that gecko is going to come down next turn, or like the following turns, it always feels pretty great, because now I don't have to worry about attacking with everything, because I'm just gonna use Gecko to bring them back out as active anyway. I decided to swing into her life, and it puts her at 1. I think at that point, genuinely, I was just pretty tempted. Okay, so at this point, it's really important to note that I passed the turn, and then I noticed I did not use Blocker Sabo's effect to draw 2, trash 2, but she was, you know, she was kind enough to let me do it, and stack my trash into being better than it already was. I think now there is a baby ace and a big brother Sabo in there. So she takes her turn, and she swings 6 into my blocker Sabo, which I do not save. I very rarely counter out to save the brothers, unless I know next turn I can absolutely go for game with all those bodies there. And then she drops Katakuri, which is, you know, you only really learn the hard way how annoying that card is for Black Yellow Luffy. It really kind of foils my plans here, because I definitely did not want to do a turn where I bring out 2 Luffys in a row. You know, it's always better to pump out a Sabo or an Ace or whatever fits the situation best. But by playing Katakuri, she's put me in a situation where, like, if you can, like, obviously you can see right here, I have to play my baby Luffys. I can't necessarily use Gecko because there's no corresponding baby Luffys to bring out for this turn. I think what I do next here, I don't know if I do it again, that's for sure, but I use my Egghead Luffy, and I actually KO one of her Shirahoshi blockers, which gives her more life, but I think at the time, I thought to myself, well, at least 10 cost Ace won't have full value if she decides to use it next turn. Even though I was 100% the one that put her down to 1 life in the first place. Despite her using Katakuri on me, I was extremely lucky to have all those baby Luffys in my hand. I think I see all of them in this game. So, you know, I managed to get the Luffys out anyway. I use leader ability, and I stack Sabo and Ace into there, definitely planning to use them the following turn. I don't see a reason to buff my leader all the way to 13. But I swing with my blocker Sabo, because again, nothing feels too threatening on board. Even if she wanted to swing with Katakuri, she'd have to invest Dawn into that. And if she invests Dawn into that, that takes her away from playing a 10 cost Rush Ace. She could play out Yamato, but that doesn't... Whenever you know that you can consistently go to 9k, nothing feels like too much of a threat. So when it becomes her turn, she swings 7 at my Sabo blocker. I let it go because there's never really again, like I just said, there's never really a need to save things unless you know you can go for game. She plays Kata, stacks the Luffy to the bottom of my life, and she passes. A little annoying that there are that many face-up brothers in my life and not on my field, but thank goodness I have Gecko in hand. Honestly, I really do feel like Gecko is the be-all end-all for this deck. I get to bring out my Ace, I get to bring out my Sabo, and I don't think she meant to do it, but by accident, she put me on that really sweet spot, one life loop type of thing. Sabo draws me into 2 more 2Ks, which I think is my favorite part of this deck, because, you know, some way, somehow, even when your gas is starting to run out, if you look down at your hand, there's probably a lot of 2Ks. Or maybe this deck is just really, really nice to me. I swing 9 at lead, trying to see if I can bait out counter. I can't. She takes it because I think she recognizes, like, again, she can get full value off of 10 cost Ace at this point. And I don't want to give her leader ability for free, so I just pass. I think the scariest part about playing Black Yellow Luffy when you play against Enel is that really, really good Enel players will 100% starve you. And, you know, at one point their board's gonna look like Kata, Ace, and Yamato, and you're just gonna have to quake in your boots in fear. She uses the 10 cost Ace here, and she actually passes. I'm not too sure if that was the correct choice, especially because swinging with the Ace might have helped with baiting counter or getting that 5 cost Luffy in my life into the bottom of my deck. I'm not too sure. I would love to hear your opinions on it. So here I swing 7 and she takes. I think this is a turn where I decide to be extremely, extremely aggressive because I know I've got the comfortability to do so. I swing 9. I'm trying to tell her, like, hey, you're gonna have to use leader ability. You're gonna have to discard a card in your hand for that, and I bet you, if anything, I will still have more swings once you use it. She counters out of my 9k swing, which feels a little bit telling of what's in her hand, and I play another Gecko. It always feels good to get multiple Geckos in a row because I think in this current meta, I think 2 Geckos is the win con. It's surprising. Against, like, really amazing players, like, getting the Gecko effect off just once is definitely not enough. So I bring out that Luffy that she put into my life. I pump it up to 8. My leader gets pumped up to 7. And then I use leader ability just so I can use that baby Sabo and bring out yet another Sabo blocker. So I put Sabo and Ace into my life here. I put Ace just so it becomes the follow-up for next turn, because seeing the 2 Geckos on board, seeing my Luffy, if it stays, that can be 8k, my leader that will probably be pumped up to 9 again, and 2 Sabo blockers, it definitely feels like my next turn is going to be another turn where I can be even more aggressive, and definitely putting that Rush Ace in there it just only adds to that. So I pass here, because again, I don't want her to get full value off of another Rush Ace if she happens to have it. But here, what she does instead, she swings 9 to my Gecko, which I think is the better play, in my opinion, as a Luffy player. Swinging into my life never really scares me as much, or into my brothers, because I can bring them back. It's swinging into my Gecko, because 100% I want my Gecko to stay, so I probably will give you the counter. But if I'm giving you the counter for Gecko, that means I won't have the counter for my life later on when I run out of gas. She plays Yamato here. She heals 1, which, like, again, is pretty, a little bit annoying, just because Enel is he's a little bit of a worm like that. He just refuses to lose life. But after that, she has to pass turn. And here I swing 6. And I believe afterwards I swing 6 again. I think it was unfortunate on her end that if she did happen to get triggers, they were not very useful. She counters out of that 6k swing because I think she can recognize that her leader ability will not be enough to help with her longevity in the game for this turn. She takes this one as well. And if I remember correctly, it's yet another useless trigger. It's quite heartbreaking when the triggers are things like Raigo, and both you and your opponent are at very, very low life. She discards a Yamato, which lets me know that, she probably does not have as much counter as she'd like in her hand. I swing 9 again, and I think at this point, she does use the Shirahoshi blocker, which, thank goodness, I'm so glad it's gone. I'm always waiting for when Enel players finally decide to get rid of them. And despite using it for follow-up, I actually just use Luffy's ability to pump it up to 8, draw 1, and trash the rush ace in my life. I think I might have switched my gears or my game plan simply because I just wanted to have those really tall and heavy attacks coming through, and because I had a third gecko. Honestly, when I put down the third gecko, I could see her expression get a little bit annoyed, because I think anyone would absolutely dread seeing a third one. And the gigantic cherry on top is 100% putting out 2 more blockers. I like to tell people, even when I lose with this deck, my opponent doesn't look like the one who won. I definitely think this deck exhausts both the pilot and the opponent. But I use leader ability here. I discard the Kuzan, which is now an Ice Age, and I just stack the Sabos, and I get to dig 4 cards deep. Here there's just Luffy's, and the rest of my hand is just 2Ks. So at this point, it's just what 2K is I guess the least useful for me at this point. And I swing 11 into the Kata here, because I think here I'm starting to recognize, okay, now there's a lot of big bodies on board. I have to make sure I can last this turn and have as little things as possible swinging at my life, just so I get a next turn to swing at hers. Spoiler alert, I believe this is her last turn. And I think what she does is she focuses on trying to get rid of my geckos, which is really, really valid. I think at this point, we're both starting to feel that the game is probably in my favor. She swings 9 into my 9k gecko. I give her a 2k, which kind of gives away that my hand is a little bit rich. She swings 11 here, and I just block because I have a feeling I'll need those 2Ks. And then she swings 11 again, and I just give the remaining 2Ks in my hand. There's nothing left, but I know that if she has one last swing with her leader, which she does, I can just use a blocker Sabo. Unfortunately, however, she does use Raigo instead. I let her take it back though, because Raigo actually does not work because of Sabo. That KO immunity really makes Raigo an unfortunate card for Enel in this matchup. So now she's staring down 3 geckos and my leader. I have 1 card in hand, not that it matters. I take this turn to just put the last nail in the coffin. I swing 9. She has that, which was kind of impressive. But now I know that for the remainder of this game, she will not. The Shirahoshi trigger was not enough to take me off guard. The only thing I did not want her to get was the 0 cost event or Beji. But since this game is now coming to a close, because I do manage to get her life to 0 and hit for the final swing, I just wanted to thank you all for watching and joining us on our training arc today. We've been really appreciative of all the constructive comments we've been seeing, so please feel free to comment some more, and even like and subscribe, and we will see you and tag team next video.